Thanks for all joining. My name's Tommy. I'm head of account management here at Global 4. This morning we're here to talk about all things Teams Phone, what it does, what it might not do without our support. But I'm joined by two of our subject matter experts, which I will let introduce themselves. Matt, do you want to kick us off first?
Morning, everyone. So my name is Matthew McLeod. I actually work for Gamma. We are a network provider who provide Teams telephony solutions via partners like Global 4. I've worked in this industry for around 6-7 years, so I like to think that I know my stuff around it. So I'll be answering a few of your questions on today's webinar. Now to John to introduce himself.
Thanks, mate. Good morning, everybody. I'm John Sutherland. I do technical pre-sales here at Global 4. So generally speaking, I support the sales team, uncover sort of the techie bits and translate them so that it all makes sense and that we're doing things properly. I've been Global 4 around about 8 years or so. So yeah, I've been an account manager before, so I kind of understand some of the priorities that everyone has and what we're looking at. So yeah, I'll be supporting Matty, just kind of covering for everything from a Global 4 aspect today as well.
Wonderful. Cheers both. So look, we've got an hour booked in. Whether we use all that time, I don't know. We might be able to give you a little bit of time back. We've got around half an hour, 45 minutes worth of content, and that just gives us a little time towards the latter end to open up the chat function for any questions. So look, Matt, probably a good place to start is probably with the basics. Teams Phone, what is it and how does it work?
So Teams Phone in itself is effectively using Microsoft Teams as not just an internal communication platform. So many of you on this call might use Teams today for a Teams meeting, a webinar like we're doing today, or maybe just calling or using the chat function between individuals within your own company. When you take the step into Teams Phone, it actually makes Microsoft Teams your one single platform for all communication. So it gives you the ability to make external calls to landlines, mobiles, natively from Microsoft Teams. So there's no need to move from one platform to another to make an outbound PSTN call. You can do it all within Microsoft Teams. Going a little bit further on that, and something we'll explore in more detail later on, is actually you can have your main business numbers, like your main number, auto attendance. You can have hunt groups. A lot of functionality can be embedded into Teams to make it your phone system. The way in which we actually make Microsoft Teams your phone system is via something called Operator Connect. I do appreciate the word Operator Connect. It's not the most inventive of names. That is just the industry term. But what Operator Connect effectively is a certified way of voice enabling Microsoft Teams. So the product that Global 4 can provide you with is a product that actually enables you to provide voice to Teams in a certified manner. Gamma, as a network, are a certified Operator Connect provider, and we provide the services via companies like Global 4 who provide you with the service, the support, the management that John will elaborate on later in the session. But as part of Operator Connect, it is just voice enabling Microsoft Teams. It's using Teams for that inbound and outbound calling. But actually, as you'll see in the bottom right image, the Teams Admin Center actually becomes the point of presence for your management of the phone system. That is pretty much what Teams Phone is. Tommy, if you just move to the next slide, I will show you a little demo in a second, but just to give you a quick flavor, Teams Phone is exactly what I've just mentioned. It's using Microsoft Teams as that single platform for voice. It gives you the ability to make and receive calls from Teams, have things like your voicemail, contacts, all of those native in that Teams application. One thing that I haven't mentioned, and probably immediately you think of, and if you see the box at the bottom left, is that Teams isn't just a desktop app that many of you may use. You can use this in web browser. You can use the mobile app. So if you're out and about, you can use that mobile app to make and receive calls as well. Equally, if there is requirements for people with handsets, so it's someone likes a handset on the desk, again, that is something that can be enabled with Teams Phone. So it's not just this desktop application that most of you may think of. It is absolutely a phone system that can be used in many different ways. We will go through a demo now and show you some of this in more detail, but to give you a good flavor of how it actually works and looks. here. So ultimately, what I'm showing you here is the web browser version. When you click into calls, this is where everything will change. You get the dial pad in the top left, where you can type in any mobile number and call Alan Shearer if you really want to. When you make a call, you will see you have the ability to call as yourself. So this is where you would call using your individual number. So you can see my own personal number here. I think it's gone paused, I think. Oh, there we go. So I can call as myself here. So that is me making an outbound call myself. Or if I was part of a department, I can present out my department number when making an outbound call. Equally, you can do that and present out a main business number as well. In the middle, you have the ability to view your missed calls, incoming calls, and also your voicemails. As you can see here, all of your voicemails are transcribed, so you can actually read your voicemails as well as click and listen to them. So all of this is seamless in that one single platform. You then got speed dials, so any regular contacts, you can pin them there and have a quick access to make an outbound call to them. And then all of your contact info. So you can add as many contacts in here so that if they call into you, their name will pop up so you know who you're speaking to as well. I'm just going to show you a quick call here. So I'm just calling a mobile externally. As I said, that is the beauty of using Microsoft Teams for your phone system, is it's just that one single platform. It's not a new user experience. So I'm just making a call. This is just me calling my mobile. Not Alan Shearer, I'm afraid. But when you get into this, you will see you have a dial pad. So if you ring if you rang Global 4, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. You can do that using the dial pad on the screen. You've got your hold music. So if I wanted to ask Tommy a question, I could pop someone on hold and play some music. All of that hold music is customizable. The transfer button is probably the best part of the platform. So transfer capability is nice and simple. So you can do what we call a blind transfer. Somebody has called in and they want to speak to Holly. I can click on Holly and straight away see her presence. You can see that little circle. She is actually offline. But if she was showing us green, we might transfer the call through to her. If she was showing us red, we might think she's not the best person to transfer the call to, and we'll send it to a colleague. Equally, you've got the consultant transfer. So that is where you might have a query come in, and you might want to give Holly a quick heads up as to what they're calling about, because it might be an important call. Within there, I can choose to do the consult via chat or via audio, depending on how, on her presence or how important I think the call may be for Holly. You can do other parts of the platform, so you can bring in extra participants. So if you wanted to bring a manager, say there was a complaint or an escalation, you can absolutely add extra individuals using that people section here. Record and transcribe. So you might see that's here. Think about call recording. This is what we call ad hoc recording, where you have to start and stop. This is not automatic recording. Hold the thought on that. We may come into more detail around what we can do around that later. And finally, the bit that I like as well is park call. I like to think of the McDonald's drive-through when I think of this, but effectively it's where you're putting someone in a parking slot. So I put them in parking slot 12 because the person they may wish to speak to might be making a coffee or they might be at the toilet. I can put that customer on hold. I could then receive another call. But if I told John that the call park is in call park slot 12, they can pop in that code and they can pick up that call and then be connected to that individual. So it's another way of moving calls around your business using Microsoft Teams. Teams isn't just about having it as for an individual making calls. If you're part of a department, so say I'm part of the provisioning team, I've got my posts, I've got my file sharing, which you may absolutely use within Teams today. But when you embrace Teams telephony, you also have the ability to view your centralized calling. So any calls you've made on the provisioning number, any calls you've received on that provisioning number, you can view within here. And most importantly, those centralized voicemails. So any voicemails for that provisioning team, everyone in the provisioning team can have access to those, again, transcribed and visible in there. You can also access these on email, like an email group if you wanted to. And my Marmite feature, some people love this, some people choose not to use it. Effectively, this is where you can give your employees of a department the ability to toggle in and out of a call queue. So if they were going to the toilet, they could toggle off. If they're going out for lunch, you could toggle out. So it gives that ability to be opted in and out. Above that, there is a supervisor license that you can have if you did wish to have a manager role in there. Into settings, this is where you configure everything from how long you want calls to ring you for before they go to a voicemail, where you can record your voicemail greeting. You can also integrate this with things like Outlook. So if you have your automatic replies on Outlook, you can have the exact same on your phone. So if someone calls during the period you're out of office, you can play a message in there as well. The next part is, again, an optional feature. This is where if you wanted to have someone like a sales manager have the ability to actually control some of the call functionality on the groups, they can do so within here. So they could change the message on the sales line. They could change how the calls are routed to the sales line without being an admin across the board. There's a few other things you can add into here. If you're using Copilot, Copilot can absolutely do things on, summarize your calls. You can add in analytics, call recording that we'll touch on in a bit more detail later. Just to give quick reference, your whole phone system will be managed in the Teams Admin Center. All of your existing numbers can be retained and ported into the system and assigned to users, to groups, departments, should you so wish. And without going into too much detail around these, auto attendance, call queues, these are things that you can absolutely do within here. When you go into a call queue, just to show you, this is just what we traditionally call as a hunt group. So this might be your provisioning team. There's a new feature that I really wanted to make reference to, which is something called callback. So this is a kind of contact center-esque feature that is available within Teams, where you can set eligibility conditions so that if someone's waited a certain amount of time in a queue, if there's a high number of people in a queue, you can actually enable them to press a key to request a callback rather than sitting in the call queue and wasting their day. So that's one of the features that I really wanted to just pick out upon to show you how much functionality there is actually natively within Microsoft Teams. But just to summarize that, and I appreciate we went at pace, it really is about embracing Microsoft Teams, not just as that meetings and messaging capability. It's about using it as a telephony system as well.
Thank you for that, Matt. That was very, very useful. Obviously, at Global, we've got clients that are talking to us on an almost daily basis about what Teams Phone could look like for them. Your opinion, what are the main reasons businesses are making the move, and is there actually any evidence to suggest that others are as well?
I think certainly there's a few reasons why it has evolved and more people are moving to Teams. I think without mentioning the word beginning with C that we all know from a few years ago, lots of businesses when moved to home working or hybrid working, that did absolutely increase the usage of Microsoft Teams across the globe, but obviously specifically in the UK. So that ability to work remotely with this system has definitely seen businesses opt for this change, especially people using PBXs on site. This makes it much easier to use remotely, but also manage remotely as well. I think one of the biggest things is those two bits in the middle, familiar platform. Lots of people are using Teams. Lots of people see Teams as a platform they may have used at some point, whether it be in a work capacity or whether it be I don't know, a quiz or something online. It's a familiar platform that people often have used. So the training aspect is a lot more reduced in terms of it's not teaching something new in many cases. And I've mentioned it earlier, that one single platform, it really does facilitate productivity. So I think a lot of IT managers, businesses that we've been speaking to really have seen it as a real option to unify to one single management platform, not just one single platform for their day-to-day users to make calls internally and externally from the same platform. We have seen a transition. And probably the big thing that has facilitated the transition, I'll show you some market stats here, is that actually over the last 3-4 years, there has been a huge investment from both Microsoft and telephony operators like Gamma into Teams Phone. And the reason for this is that Microsoft see a real opportunity in the market that people can use that one single platform as their communication tool. 320 million global active users. In fact, that is the most recent stat, but that actually comes from 2024. The 2025 stat hasn't actually been released. So, the usage of Teams is up. The actual amount of businesses that are using Teams Phone is very much up. Microsoft stated that their Microsoft Teams license is 31% year on year. And if I'm honest, we aren't seeing it in specific verticals. We do see a lot of schools, charities look at this on a basis that the Microsoft licensing is reduced, but equally any business who uses Teams, this can be a solution that can help enhance your productivity. And probably one thing I like to point out is that image on the left hand side. A lot of people think of Microsoft and probably I still do so today, even though I've been talking about this solution for 5-6 years now. Immediately when I first think of the word Microsoft Teams, I instantly think of a Teams meeting. And I'm sure all of you do because you spend so much time doing these day to day. But actually, Microsoft Teams, when you enable it with Operator Connect, is much more than that. It is absolutely a fully fledged telephony solution. And Gartner is a market analyst company. Microsoft have actually been the leader of that graph for 6 years in a row. I'm a big football fan, if you hadn't told, but not many, and a sportsman, not many people can say they've done something 6 times in a row, and Microsoft have done that. So that's why we're seeing a lot of people trust Teams as that step forward.
Just to add on to that, mate, as well, like from the sort of global 4 perspective, Tom, if you can come back to that slide a second. For us, it's that realization, like when talking to customers about potential changes, they want to move away from an old on-premise PBX, so they're considering the sort of hosted telephony options that are out there. That kind of light bulb moment when they realize they're already a 365 customer, they're a Microsoft house through and through, they're using Teams for meetings, and that's just echo what you're saying about that assumption that Teams is a meetings platform. To uncover the fact that you've got these additional features, that there is a fully fledged phone system just waiting to be unlocked right behind the surface, that you've got the callback function, which tends to then result in a contact center level discussion and adds into the pricing sort of thing. The biggest sort of function I think that goes overlooked, is that presence. So the ability to actually see, like Matt was showing you in the demo there, transferring to a colleague. If you've got a phone system that sits behind Teams and you're using it independently, you're on the phone call, and then all of a sudden someone sends you a Teams message or rings you and tries to bring you into a Teams message. There's so few systems that we've seen out there that actually interact with Teams properly and say that when I'm on the phone, don't be calling me on Teams, don't invite me into a meeting. And the fact that if Teams is handling all of that in one ecosystem, you've got that presence setting that's overarching. Even just something as simple as that takes away a lot of kind of the bugbears that a lot of our customers see. Back to you, May. Sorry.
No, absolutely fine. And I think these are some of the kind of forecast of what is predicted and what we're seeing in the market. This is based off what's happening right now and what's expected to happen due to certainly developments in the platform. I mean, Microsoft are a huge global brand. They are investing a lot of functionality into Teams. I mean, that callback feature, for example. If you spoke to Tommy in December, he wouldn't be able to talk to you about it. That was a feature that came in January, February. So it is an ever-evolving solution. There is more and more features and capabilities coming into there, and that's what is leading to that trajectory that by 2028 they expect around well, somewhere in the region of about 1/3 of the UK voice market to be Teams enabled platforms. And that's due to the, those stats that I showed you on the last screen around the growth of Teams and, actually underpicking why people are moving to Teams around that productivity, that, one single platform, one single place for management. And probably to echo John's point is actually, if you're using Microsoft licensing, you're using the Microsoft ecosystem. This enables you to have that full ecosystem in one. And I touched on a few links into where the phone system can link into Outlook. You can absolutely interlink into, the wider ecosystem and other Microsoft applications like things like Copilot. We're seeing more and more businesses using Copilot in the Teams Phone remit. So again, that's something that you can speak to, Tommy and the wider team about, how that can also embrace this and make that solution even better if you did want to look at that journey.
Thanks, Matt. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about the good stuff, right? And we've spoken a lot about clients that have got a legacy type of environment moving into Teams and how that's an obvious decision. But for someone that's sat here on today on a modern day VoIP solution, is there anything they lose out? Because from my understanding and from what I see of Teams, out of the box, there can be some restrictions in terms of the functionality. So the direct question is, where does it fall short currently, and what can we do to support and mitigate that?
Well, I'd start by answering that question by saying, if you asked me that question 2 years ago, I'd have a completely different answer to what I say right now. Because as I just mentioned, there has been a huge evolution in this platform. There has been so many new features. In fact, I could list them out. I'm not going to bore you to death by listing them all out, but there has been a lot of features that have come. Even today, we sit in a place where, from a telephony perspective, a lot of the features are there. So auto attendance, call queues, callback, those typical features that you may use day to day are absolutely part of the proposition. But there is absolutely still some gaps, and there's no hiding away from that. One of the gaps that, again, we can talk about how Global 4 can support you in fulfilling that gap is things like call reporting. Some of you may have requirements to report on calls, activity, outbound calls, wait times. There isn't really that much detail in the reporting natively within Microsoft and the ones you get in the Teams Admin Center. It's relatively limited, and that's probably why I didn't show you in my demo in truth, but I will show you how we can plug that gap. The other one, which is really, really important, and some of you, depending on the industry that you may operate in, is call recording. So compliant call recording, being able to record calls and store them securely so that you can access them. And some of you, depending on where you're using them, you may need them for compliance regulation. So call recording is only ad hoc. So that recording I showed you before, where you could click start recording, that would be on me to click start recording. So if I was going to do something unprofessional, let's be honest, I'm not going to click start recording. The flip side of what we will show you in a second and where we can plug that gap is actually, compliant recording. But as an actual phone system, a lot of the core components are there. But what Global 4 and the team can do is actually enable you to have some additional features. And I'll show you a very short demo of the two capabilities. So we'll start here on the kind of call recording. So we partner with a vendor who are a certified Microsoft call recording platform. You can view any call that has been made into any user. You can actually see the sentiment of the call, so whether it's a positive call, negative call, or a neutral call. When you actually open this up, you can see a summarization of the call recording, so you can quickly see what that call has been about. You can see, again, when you open it up, it gives you a bit more detail if you've missed that off, but you can start to see the topic. So if there's abuse in there, it will actually tag that for you. So it's doing a lot of that review of the call without you having to click and listen to it. So, you might save 5 minutes here. You don't have to click and listen to the call recording. You may have to, but also you can see things like transcripts. So you can view speaker 1, speaker 2, and see what's said on that call. So the call recording is not just listening to a call, it's actually being able to drill into the detail. It can chapterize the transcriptions. There is so much capability within the platform call recording, you might just think records your calls, stores them, but it can absolutely do so much more than that. I like to think of a bit of a roller coaster on this one. So this is showing you when the call was negative, when the call was positive. So you can actually start to understand how your agents are handling customer interactions whilst on the phone. And this is obviously your PSTN calls in here. So that was a bit more of an advanced license I've just shown you here. The lighter license is a bit different. You just get the transcript and the visibility of the call recordings, so you can listen to them and view the summarization. If you wanted to drill into some of the topics, an example here is complaints. It gives you some detail of how many complaints you've had this week compared to last. It will show you those, what the complaints were about, if there's specific topics. So it really is doing the work for you. It's actually getting all of your call data, all of your communications that you have over voice with your customers, and reviewing that for you in there. So that's a solution that can be overlaid. It is Teams compliant, so it is certified Microsoft Teams call recording. It absolutely does start recording the minute you pick up the phone, whether that's receiving a call or making a call. You can choose which users you wish to record. So if you had a managing director and they didn't want their calls recorded, that does not have to be done. So you can absolutely choose that. But it really does offer you power and capability and save you time on reviewing staff performance, dispute resolutions. And I won't go into too much detail, but there's varying lengths of times on the storage and retention. So if you have a certain requirement that you need calls stored for a certain amount of time, we can absolutely facilitate that, and Global 4 will provide you with the right license for that.
I think for us, mate, as well, is that powerful tool. AI transcription, sentiment analysis, these kind of, in-depth training aids that you can actually really get through things like Dubber. I think one of the kind of conversations that we tend to have is that, a lot of customers will look at their Teams ecosystem, they're recording their meetings, they're having Copilot to summarize it, catch me up on what have I missed, all that kind of good stuff. And voice gets overlooked. The voice conversations can sometimes still be that customer facing aspect of a business. So to actually have something like Dubber on the other side of it, that's giving that under the hood analysis of how are my team doing, what are my trends, what can I see at a glance. We just see so much value from those as you'd call it an add-on, but it actually becomes really part of it. And yeah, the fact that it really fills the gap where teams fall short, I think it's very, very valuable.
And on the addition to call recording, if you have a requirement for call analytics, we can actually achieve that as well. The analytics inside of Teams is limited. When you log into the analytics platform, you can see how many calls have been received, missed, when your busy periods are, etc. You can also get a presence dashboard. So this presence dashboard is very useful in a sense. You can see the availability of all of your users in one go. You can filter by departments. So if you had a call that comes in and they want to speak to someone from provisioning, rather than searching for each of those individuals, you can do that filter and see who's available. You will see I'm using a web browser. You can absolutely view this inside of the Teams app. So you don't actually have to leave Teams to see that, the reporting. When you are in here, you can build a whole load of bespoke reports if you wish. So you can build as many reports as you want. Obviously, the team at Global 4 will support you. Tommy, it's paused again. Sorry. You can build as many reports as you wish. You can build wall boards. You can build individual user reports, so you can see how many calls someone's made. You can choose the timeframes that you build those on. I'm not going to go into all the capability around the reporting and what you can build, but there is absolutely various things that we can build and manage reports. And there is a whole load that are actually already there out the box that you can utilize. I'll show you a couple of reports that are probably the most common reports that we see in use. So user activity report, where you can straight away see individuals, how many calls they've made, answered, outbound calls, average talk time, those usual stats that you're wanting to report on. You transferred, wait times, overflow, etc. And if you want something really, really clever, you can build a kind of bespoke report. So this is something, again, the team at Global 4 will help you to build whatever you wish. But straight away, you can see this is 3 reports in one. You can see when calls come in. It's a live wallboard showing you how long they've been waiting for. You can see the presence of those users. The flashing red at the top right that you may have seen, that's because I've set a KPI on my staff that I want them to make 5 outbound calls a day. So it's flashing red because they've not successfully done that as of yet. But you can really use this reporting platform and, you know, build on the reports that you wish to consume. So, you know, if you took the step to this kind of solution and you wanted to report on this or that, you know, please do articulate that, and the team will build you a report, a wallboard that you can stick in an office environment. It's totally up to you, and this platform is very flexible to achieve that. And that's one of the real limitations that can be fulfilled with Global 4, because the reporting outside of Teams natively is very much raw data. You have to, you know, this is actually taking the raw data and giving you that detail that can make it consumable for both yourselves, IT managers, managing directors, to help you facilitate, you know, business decisions. You know, whether you need extra recruitment in a certain department, that's where this can be really advantageous.
I'm smiling here, mate, because if anybody else on this call has actually gone into the Teams admin console and tried to look for the stats and just look at maybe how many missed calls they've had for the last week, it's just not there. Even to this day, it's quite incredible, really, that Microsoft have overlooked the kind of level of statistics and reporting that Akixi, as we've just seen, brings. And just, you know, to get a very basic, you may not care about stats, but, you know, if you want to find out where your lost revenue is, you're going to start with your team's productivity, your missed calls and their availability. This unlocks that. It's just as simple as that, really.
Thanks both. That's really, really knowledgeable. I think we know out the box is basic, and I think what we're wanting to get across there is we go to market, we make sure we've got the strategic relationships with partners to be able to plug the gap. So thank you for running through that. And Matt, let's face it, pretty much all of us on this call are going to be Microsoft houses pretty much through and through from a licensing perspective. We've also mentioned licensing so far, but for some of our clients on the call, how do they know whether Teams Phone is something they're already included in part of their Microsoft estate?
So effectively, if any of you using Teams for voice PSGen calling, depending on what solution you're using, you probably will already have that Teams Phone standard license, or if you consumed it quite a while ago, it might be called Teams Phone System, because the license has changed names more recently. The Teams Phone license, so I mean, there's a whole load of Microsoft licensing out there. You could be on Business Standard, Business Premium, even Enterprise license, E1s, E3s, A1s, E3s. There's so many licensing, but, you know, if you're using Teams, you know, internally for meetings, messaging, that sort of thing, you will have a Teams base, you know, 365 license. The additional license that is needed from a Microsoft perspective, from a licensing perspective, is called Teams Phone Standard, and that's what gives you the software capability, the ability to actually use the features inside of Teams. And then Operator Connect is what enables you to actually make those calls. So it's what actually traverses the calls out to the PSGen network. So it gives you the ability to make a call to a landline, to a mobile. It gives you your inclusive minutes bundles. It gives you your numbers, your number ranges. It also gives you some disaster recovery, so an additional platform within there that can provide an overlay to this. But if you're not sure on what licensing you have or what licensing you need, please just reach out to, you know, your account manager, or, you know, Tommy, John, and they can absolutely help to inform you of what licensing you would need. But if you're using Teams to make an external call, whether that be using something like Microsoft calling plans or direct routing or another means, you probably are already, well, you will be geared up with the correct Microsoft licensing, and it will just be a change of that voice enablement piece within there. But the team at Global 4 will absolutely help you with the right requirements on a licensing perspective to make sure that you've got everything you need moving forward.
Cheers, Matt. Much appreciate that. John, we've spoken a lot about Gamma and Microsoft with how they support our clients. Now, our clients is the key bit here. What do we do specifically at Global to support our clients in provisioning these types of changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So in essence, we form that layer. So a customer can go out to Microsoft, they can order the licenses, they can have their calling plan added in, and if you're familiar and capable with the Teams Phone Admin Center, absolutely brilliant. The difference that we make is we provide that. Well, first of all, that first line support desk. You've got teething issues, you've got agents with problems with headsets and so on. Microsoft aren't really going to be particularly reactive in looking at that for you. There's not a particular SLA involved. You're dealing with an online support forum or a ticketing system. Global 4, for example, if we were to take you through this journey, you'll be given a named project manager. They'll be doing their due diligence, checking your licensing. They'll be checking where your numbers sit currently with which network, when we can maybe port those across, what that looks like. Take you through that entire process with a bit more care. With that as well, I mean, we would look at things like best practices. We have our own support engineers, our own remote engineers. They can look at, like Mike was saying, the additions of the call recording, the analytics, how those work best for your industry. What are the best practices, and actually making those work properly, not just giving you a license and saying, right, here you go. It's up to you to get that sorted now. With that, of course, though, there comes the consideration of, okay, the licenses, what's all this going to cost? What does Operator Connect look like versus the sort of Teams phone system, like going directly to Microsoft? I think I'll probably maybe throw this back to you, Tommy. What can we do, and what your team can do to actually help with that kind of capital outlay, the monthly investment? What does that really look like?
That is a very, very good question. Before I do answer, I want to acknowledge I see some questions dropping in the chat box, which we'll get through to just in a moment. But capital outlay or monthly investment, anything financial related is always going to be or if not one of the biggest considerations for any business considering to make any change. And I think a good place to start is at Global 4, we are utterly passionate about transforming technology for our clients. But we also understand there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? There is always some form of investment to move things forward in lots of different environments. But that's the sole purpose we built our multi-service discount loyalty scheme in the last 6 or so months, because long gone are the days where suppliers need several different need several different suppliers for all aspects of business needs. And do you know what? Global 4's ability to procure a large range of services is by no means unique in any way, shape, or form. But the way we reward our clients is definitely unique. So I'm sure maybe some people are wondering, what's the relevance of talking about other services when we're here talking about how will Global 4 mitigate the costs involved potentially with making a change-like move to Microsoft Teams? At the moment, businesses everywhere will not be able to use their leverage for their buying power. Typically with different services, the likelihood of your mobiles, your MDM, your IoT, your gas, water, electric, your IT support, and I can go down a rabbit hole here with how many different vendors our clients might have. The likelihood of those contracts coming out at once is pretty much nil. And that's where it starts to become a little bit relevant. So let's use an example of a client that's maybe on this call and a transition to a Teams phone solution. Let's say it's a 20% increase. Now, I'm not going to suggest that's the going rate, but it's a good example to start with. Now, what we'll look at is not just the move to Teams. We will take a real holistic view of all of the different expenditures within a business. And we will honour discounts today on Teams Phone, and let's say we'll honour removing the requirement for a 20% increase on a monthly to move to Teams. Now, the reason we'll do that is we'll work with our clients to understand a roadmap of when their services do come out. So let's say in this example, mobiles come out back in the summer, utilities is January next year, and IT support is the latter end of 2026. Now, what we're not suggesting or expecting is we become our all-in-one encapsulating supplier for every single one of our clients, because there are going to be great relationships already embedded with existing suppliers, but typically we'll find there's 2 or 3 different services a client might be receptive to the idea to review. So the reason we'll honour a discount today on today's product in one product in isolation is we know, and we've worked together to understand when the additional services could come over to Global 4. So for us, there's some more business in the future, but for our clients, they can use their buying power for their several different services today, where in the current format, businesses simply aren't able to do that. So if any one on the call today, whether it's specific to talk about Teams Phone, to understand how that might specifically look like for them, and want to talk about how the multi-service loyalty scheme could help support fund any changes. If you've got an account manager, go to them, they're your contact. And do you know what, if you don't have one, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll find a way to see how this can tangibly work for your businesses. Now, I did mention some questions have come up in the group. John, have you got access to the chat function?
I have indeed. So we've got a question from Jason. This might be one for you, mate. Can Dubber record Teams at native meetings and not just calls? You're on mute at the moment, buddy.
Very good question.
Happens to the best of us.
I know. It's always got to be
have to do it for a bit of comedy. Very good question. So when you use Dubber, when you set it up, you have the option to choose whether it just records your PSTN calls, so calls to mobiles and landlines. Also, you can choose whether it records Teams meetings and internal conversations. So if John was to call Tommy, whether that's recorded, you have the choice of what's recorded at any given time. So the answer is yes, it can be done. It's up to you whether you want it to or not.
Perfect. That is the only question I've got in the Q&A at the moment. So if anyone has any additional ones, feel free to just tap them out real quick, and we can certainly field them. I'll give everyone maybe a couple of seconds. Oh, hang on, I've got another one. Follow-up question from Jason, Matt. We've got, what retention period does Dubber hold? This might be a good one to talk about the structures, maybe of the licenses we have.
Yeah, so there's kind of, well, there's kind of 2 structures. There's an 18-month retention license, where you essentially have your calls recorded for 18 months. Obviously, slightly cheaper on that sense because it's an 18-month license. The other license types have unlimited storage and retention. So, albeit it says unlimited, you can absolutely have it unlimited. But say, for example, you were a company that needed it for 7 years for MiFID compliance, you could set it for 7 years and then auto delete afterwards. So effectively, we can fulfill whatever retention periods you need. 18 months being the slightly cheaper option, but then the alternative is the unlimited storage and retention. One thing that, John, one thing that might be worthwhile just highlighting is I don't think we really covered the disaster recovery part of the platform so far. So could you just give it a bit of an insight into what Ciptrum Call Manager is and how that works for everyone?
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's a very good point. So within the sort of the dialogue we would normally have, and sort of considering functionality, licensing and all of that sort of good stuff. A topic that does come up quite often, particularly around hosted, is disaster recovery, some sort of failover. My calls are now going via my internet connection. I'm now completely reliant on my broadband to actually operate as a voice function, and it's very valid. So what if, and this is a big if, and it's a very unlikely if, what if Teams goes down? If I've enabled my Teams client for calls, I've now put 2 eggs in one basket. It's unlikely. We all know that Microsoft have got the infrastructure to have their own disaster recovery. But one thing that we really like about Gamma's Operator Connect solution is the fact they actually bundle a completely separate product in free of charge. It's called SIP Trunk Call Manager. In a nutshell, it is a control of the actual the phone numbers. So if, for example, you wanted an out-of-hours call route or you wanted a disaster recovery plan in place, on an individual number basis, you can actually have diverts that are put in place automatically. So if the call doesn't reach Microsoft service and it bounces, SIP Trunk Call Manager can actually put in a disaster recovery mode and actually send that call to a completely different direction. You might have a separate system you've got somewhere, or even just a mobile phone or a voicemail box, some sort of messaging that actually kicks in as a failover. It's so small, so simple, but really overlooked. So yeah, we really enjoy that. I've got one more question. We're back on Dubber. What about PCI options, pause and resume?
So yeah, so within the platform, there's pause and resume capability. So within the platform, there is an app that can be downloadable inside of Teams. So when I showed you a Copilot, etc. on the left, there is the ability to do pause and resume within there. So you can do pause and resume if required.
That's good.
Shall I take the next question? One of the questions, if we go with direct routing, and I'll put /operator connect, is there any additional hardware appliance required to be hosted? With all of the solutions that Global 4 offer in terms of Teams Voice, they all come with certified SBCs. So all of the infrastructure is built and it's Microsoft compliant. So there's no infrastructure that's needed on site specifically. These are all managed services that Global 4 provide you with, and will obviously do a lot of the, well, as much of the setup and provisioning that you require, but no additional hardware, unless you're wanting handsets, I guess, around that.
That was exactly what I was going to add on there, May, is we have got a range of Team certified devices, so headsets, handsets, you name it. We've tested them all, we've looked at the best, and we can certainly make recommendations around that area as well. So we've got it covered. I think we've got one more for you, May, who's just popped in. Does Teams Phone support geographic call routing?
Yes, so anyone, you can make calls to any geographic or non-geographic number from the platform, and you can absolutely host and present both geographic numbers and non-geographic numbers from the platform. So if you do have an 08 or an 03 number, that can be hosted on the platform and presented outbound. So no issues on any of that as well. Equally, probably one thing to point out is if you do need to make international calls, you can make international calls from the Teams platform. If, for example, you were a UK only business and didn't want to be able to make international calls, we can absolutely set blockers to prevent that as well. So again, the power's in your hands. You're in control of what you use and when.
Perfect. I think that concludes the Q&A. So Tommy, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Matt, John, thank you for your time, and for everyone for joining. If there's any questions that maybe didn't want to be asked in public forum, you've got access to me, as mentioned earlier. If you've got an account manager, please do reach out for any queries you've got. For anyone that's interested in seeing how specifically this might work in their environment, there's still access to both Matt and John to demonstrate the various different ways we could achieve that for you. So again, thank you all for your time, and have a really lovely day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.